We are live. Oh, so we're live right now? Do I have to do the clap thing, Joe? Okay, ready? That good? I'm not a very good clapper. So we're ready to start. I can just start. We'll edit out this stuff right here. All right, well, here we go. This is the first episode of The Bearded Engineer. I'm Denny Howe, and I am the Bearded Engineer. My first guest for our first episode is actually also Denny Howe, who sat with me in the car on his way to school since he was 5 years old, listening to me talk stormwater, township meetings, clients, being yelled at. I figured that was enough to scare him out of the business, but apparently it has not. So, welcome, Den. You want to introduce yourself?
Thank you. I am Denny Howe III. Recently became a PE. I also have a beard. I'm a project engineer here at Howe. I went to Drexel. I did their co-op program, which was a 5-year program. Your middle 3 years, you go to school for 6 months, and you work for 6 months, which I did here. Then graduated back in 22. I've been working here since, and just took and passed my PE about, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks ago.
I was just going to ask you whether you had a significant milestone recently.
I did.
But you did have that.
I did.
Took it first time and passed?
I took it the first time and passed.
Now you're doing your own plans?
Eventually.
So when I started in this business, it was much different because I wasn't shackled by learning AutoCAD. So I could just sit down and learn engineering and learn clients. But now, young people coming out of school have to learn AutoCAD, learn how to use it as a design platform. Like, have you enjoyed that aspect of it, or is that something that's kind of like burdensome to you?
I guess it's different for me to try to learn that stuff than you, because I kind of grew up in the age of computers and phones and technology, so not to disrespect your ability to use the computer, but I've been using it since I was pretty young. So, there's a decent learning curve that you have to get through, but once you get through it, in my opinion, the stuff that you can do is way more powerful than doing things by hand.
Right. But what certainly is something that, if you can't do, is going to hold you back in this business. It's one of the first questions that we ask people when we go to hire them, and kind of the second question that we ask them is how thick their skin is. So after doing this 3 years, I'm sure you go into school and you think about the noble aspects of engineering and making the world better, but now you're probably getting some of the heavy doses of clients yelling at you, townships yelling at you, and what does that part of the business feel like to you?
Well, definitely a challenging part of the business. If in a perfect world, that stuff wouldn't exist, but the world isn't perfect. So you just have to try to put yourself in a position where you're not going to be yelled at by anybody.
No fun to be yelled at?
No, I'd prefer not to be yelled at.
No.
Really.
And you see, we chose to call the podcast Conversations and Rants.
Yes.
I imagine it will be some conversations, but we certainly have a lot to rant about.
I could rant for hours.
Yes. Right. So in getting back to that part of it, like the process that we go through, people don't understand that when we do plans, when they live in their communities, when they go to their shopping center, when they go to their gym or their office building, the years and literally years of planning that it took in the process. But that process is what wears people down. That's what we've seen in our company wear people down the most. But how do you cope with that process?
You just kind of have to deal with it. I guess the one thing that you could do is to do all of your due diligence and homework to make sure that what you're sending in is going to have the least amount of pushback that you can. I don't want to go in with a land development plan and ask for 45 waivers and 3 variances,
right?
Because it's going to take me probably 6 years to get that stuff all approved. And that, in my opinion, that mostly comes from your discussions with the client from the get-go. Like, hey, John,
exactly.
We can go and make this road 12%, but we'll have to get a waiver, and then there'll be public meetings, and there can be residents coming out saying how dangerous it is and that kind of stuff. Or we just make it 10%. Maybe there's a little bit of extra cut that's generated, and we can just go stick it over there, and all will be fine.
Yeah, certainly managing our clients' expectations and tempering their enthusiasm, as we will be guiding them through a very arduous and long and complicated process, a process that is fraught with obstacles, right? So no one is ever happy, I always say, when I come into town. So when I come into the township meeting, for our firm, we're bringing traffic, we're bringing school-age children, we're bringing stormwater, runoff, we're bringing all the things that people don't like, and it seems like, at least it feels like, and this will be the rant portion of ours, well, we can go on for forever, it feels like it's just an absolute gauntlet that we're set up to have to go through, whether it be the municipal process, outside agency approvals, the township engineer. But do you think that process makes for a better plan?
That's a good question. I think I would say yes and no. I think that it's good for those regulations to be in place to keep developers from just doing the absolute bare minimum that they have to do so they can be in and out and sell whatever they have.
Which they would likely do.
Which they would likely do. I definitely wouldn't deny that. But maybe it's just the side effect. Maybe a side effect of these regulations to try to create a nice community is that there's just this bureaucratic, difficult process.
It's an unintended consequence that
Yeah.
we have, that is set up the way that I don't think the general public understands. And I often have local politicians bend my ear a little bit about more affordable housing, and I chuckle when I hear it, because if they actually were along, if they taped themselves to me for 3 years and saw what it took to get the job approved, then they would quickly understand why it's not affordable. But in going through that process, it feels like it's almost set up in a backwards way, because, and we could go about this all day long, but the review agencies certainly review the plans to make them better, but then at some point there's a line that feels like it gets crossed. And if I was one of my developer clients, I'm sure they would immediately jump in and say, it feels like that line is crossed much earlier in the process. But it feels like we're doing the design, and then eventually you just can't get to the finish line, that you just continually get letter after review letter after review letter from outside agencies, and you are just trying to do your best to address those comments, but you can't quite get it approved. Does that sound fair?
Yeah, and I would say it's a combination of, sometimes there are comments that I get that I feel as though I adequately addressed, but the reviewer just is like, you really should show this or that, or this isn't what I want to see. But then the even more frustrating thing is when you send something in and then you get comments back on something that didn't even change and you didn't get comments on before.
Yeah.
Which is a frustrating thing to have happen, because it makes me then look very stupid to the person who
Exactly.
I'm doing work
It
for.
makes you look like you're a dumbass. And it's one of my giant pet peeves, is that to get review comments that are new or that weren't generated before, or even my larger pet peeve, which is one that before I go out of this business one day, I will fix. But certainly there needs to be a place for young engineers to work in this business and to learn. But I don't think that it is reviewing our plans. And there's probably few things that piss me off more than having a review letter sent to me and the comments are ridiculous. And I see the person that signed the letter. I know the person personally. I know for an absolute fact that person did not write those comments to me, that they had someone in their office that was younger and likely much less experienced write them, and that comment has gotten out. And the problem with it is that it gets out, they become voluminous in the review letters, our clients read them, and they immediately say, why can't you get this approved? And as you can imagine, me addressing those comments translates directly to dollars, right? So when you're getting hammered by my invoices, one of the first things I say to our clients when they come in, especially if it's like an inexperienced person that is looking to subdivide their land or do something, is that I just prepare them that they're going to hate my guts by the end of the process. No matter what I do, my best laid efforts can be put out, but by the end of the process, they're just going to hate the process. They're going to hate me. They're going to be worn down by the bills by getting us to address things. And that's not to mention the fact that the bills that they're going to be getting from the township, because you probably know too, the township engineer and consultants also charge our client for the review process. And we've had projects where the township invoices have exceeded our design invoices, which is...
I had that happen to me. A client had complained to me that he was paying more for the municipality and their consultants to review the plans than he did for me to design them.
Yeah.
Which is wild.
It's
wild,
insanely wild. Especially when we're in this world of more affordable housing. And that's why my first question to you was, do you think this is making the process better? I certainly think that there's a peer review aspect of this business that is a good thing. And you probably know where I'm going to go with this question here in a few minutes. But is it really serving us as well? And as you know, I introduced a bill into Harrisburg a number of years ago. I spent a lot of my own money, got a lot of statewide buy-in, and that bill was introduced through Senator Truitt onto the Local Government Affairs Committee. I had the right committee, the right everything, and that bill said that each municipality had to engage 3 engineering firms to do a review, and they would bid on doing the review. And the reason I did that was to put a soft cap on the review costs so that there wasn't this flat-out incentive. I'm not accusing our township engineer partners of doing this, but we've certainly felt this, and this is not an unfamiliar feeling, not only amongst us as design engineers, but amongst clients, that there is almost an incentive for the reviews to not stop. And you say that, and people say that's not the case, but why then isn't there that one stud firm that can get jobs approved quickly? Why does it take all of us
Right.
years and years and years and hundreds of thousands of dollars to get things approved? And it's because the process is flawed. It's flawed with the way that the review is done. So I introduced the bill. I was really proud of it. I thought it was going to be my legacy thing. As you know the whole story, I went up to Harrisburg, and at the time the head of the Local Government Affairs Committee was Representative Harper, and she literally put us in an ante room, opened up the door, said I'd never support this bill, and that was the end of that. My 2 years of effort and some $30-some thousand of work was flushed down the shitter, just like that.
In that bill, if, say I submitted a project to West Goshen, and West Goshen was like, hey, we're going to have these 3 firms, they're all going to bid on reviewing this project, and, say one firm says it's $5,000, we're going to go with that person. The plans get submitted, that firm reviews the plans for $5,000, they give me back a letter. If I go to then resubmit that, then do they bid it out again?
No, it wasn't a one-time review. It was what would it take to do a normal review, meaning that you're dealing with one professional on the design side, one professional on the review side. It should stand to reason. If you write me 50 comments, I should be able to address all 50 of them in theory, but everyone has an opinion, so maybe you address 30 or 40. So maybe your review proposal covers 2 or 3 reviews. This isn't uncharted territory. This is what our conservation districts do now, right? And you pay them a flat fee, and that's it. You don't just keep paying them for forever and forever and ever, right? And they're not really looking to do that. They're looking to get it reviewed. So in the case in my bill, it was to be reviewed to what it would take to get approved. And I even had spelled out that there could be sections of it. There could be another aspect of the review of it from an escrow standpoint, or another aspect of it for the township inspections. But the township inspections are also they're very heavy, and everyone feels like the goalpost is constantly being moved. It feels like that to us as design engineers. It certainly feels like it to our developer clients, and I'm not saying that that's always the case, but certainly the way the process is set up, it can certainly feel that way. It certainly can feel that way to your average homeowner who's not used to the process.
Right. I would agree.
Right? One of our good clients that just sent us a request for proposal and said that he wants to have the plan submitted and have 0 comments. I mean, is that even a possibility?
No. There's no way. Maybe if I spent like $300,000 just going through every single thing, but even still, it would be completely and totally impossible.
Completely and totally impossible.
There's no
to
way.
do it. There's not a way. So look, I did that bill. It obviously failed. I think I committed the sin of trying to eat the elephant or eat the whale with one bite. I should have kind of taken it a little bit more in just chapters, in just pieces, but I tried to get it to solve the whole process, and none of it was self-serving. We, of course, at Howe are not township or municipal engineers, and we weren't looking to become them. We are just design, and that's what we do. But so in this case, it didn't change anything. I understand now why it got stopped. Some of the firms that do pure municipal work had approached Representative Harper and expressed their disagreement with that bill, and unfortunately, I learned a lesson of a bill dying in committee. So, but this goes to the next thing. You've been experimenting a little bit with submitting our plans to an AI program, correct?
Yes.
Yep, and tell me about that.
Can I say the AI program? I guess I can.
Well, don't give away all of our secret sauce.
I won't give away all of our secrets, but I've been using an AI, and I forget what made me think of this originally. I remember what it was. I was trying to see if I could make it plot a deed.
Yep.
Because I'm thinking, it's a computer, it does very good with numbers and lines and things like that. So I uploaded a deed that the AI could read, and it spit out some stuff that was stupid and wasn't really what I was looking for. And then it's weird. It's like you could talk to it like it's a person. And I'm like, hey, this property line is wrong. This should match up with this portion of the deed. And they would spit something else out, and I went back and forth with that for a little while. And eventually I did get it to plot the deed. It wasn't rotated properly, but the shape of it and all the bearings and distances were right. Which I was pretty creeped out by. I thought it was pretty cool. But
and this is with the infant stages of AI.
Right,
and we're a
right,
very simplistic AI program.
Yes.
Nothing sophisticated.
No. I mean, not as sophisticated as it could be.
Right.
But, so I did that, and then I kind of started thinking of what else it is that I can make it do. So I took an entire submission package. So I had a set of land development plans, a stormwater report, an erosion control report, and probably a couple response letters. And I uploaded all that stuff to this AI, and I said, review this as if you're the township engineer. And it spit out in probably 45 seconds a bunch of comments of code sections that it's not meeting, or it was all kinds of different stuff. Much of it was just kind of nonsense that didn't really apply to it, but there were some things in there where it legitimately pointed something out that was incorrect. And in this case, one of the things that pointed out wasn't incorrect, but it did pick up on it. We were proposing a infiltration basin, and in our test there was one layer of redox in our test. It wasn't really indicative of a seasonally high water table soil. It was just like one anomalous layer, and we were infiltrating below that. And the AI said, hey, this test, and it named the test, these tests exhibit redoxamorphic features. You can't put your basin here.
Yeah.
Which I was amazed that it picked that up.
And scary that, like I said, in the infant times of AI, that it can actually do that. Like,
Right.
At what point will AI be enough where it could maybe replace the municipal review process? I mean, certainly, again, in the interest of just advancing projects along and getting things done, while I'm not saying we need to divert all the way to AI right there, but certainly a day doesn't go by that I'm not either frustrated myself, or my colleagues are frustrated, or my clients are frustrated with like just the pure time and energy that it takes to get things approved. It is a very difficult process. It doesn't need to be made a million times easier, but not only does it cost a lot of money, it costs a lot of people money. I mean, that cost, without question, gets passed on to the consumer in one way or the other. It just does. But it also comes at, you as a young engineer, I mean, it's a frustrating thing. We've hired many people here that just, that process wears them down completely.
Right.
So, like, do you think AI one day will replace that process? I mean, could you see plans? Maybe they're being reviewed once by the AI and once by a human being, and revisions are made, and that's it.
It could be. I would have a few things to say. One, I feel like, especially for stuff that we do that affects people's lives, like homes and stormwater systems and things like that, there needs to be a human being looking at it, so somebody is responsible.
Agreed.
It can't just...
Well, but it's interesting that you say that, because are they really responsible? Because at the end of the day, they're not, and I think that there does need to be some element of accountability.
That's
on the
true.
review side.
I would agree.
Yep.
I would agree. But I should say, in a perfect world, that would be the case. But the other part of it is that, to run that AI takes a tremendous amount of energy, of actual electricity to run it. And I would think that once something is going to get strong enough or powerful enough to be smarter than us, and I don't know if we could even make enough power to do it. Like, Google just bought one of the reactors at 3 Mile Island to run a data center.
I think your cousin's actually working there as an
engineer.
He is. Yeah.
I know he is.
Yeah.
And there was something else I was going to add to. Oh, the other thing I would say is that the world that we live in is very complicated with all the different players that are involved with any sort of project, like sewer and municipalities and water access and other sorts of utilities. I think it would be very difficult for the AI to try to comprehend everything that's going on. Like, for example, I like cars. You like cars.
I do.
There have been a bunch of car manufacturers that have had AI generate designs for upper control arms for suspension. And the one part that's weird is that it makes them all look very organic. But in that sort of situation, it's very simple for it to figure out, you know, this is the top of the control arm, the wheels go in here, there's force going up, there's forces going this way, it gets this hot, and just kind of a complicated math trial and error for it. But for us, you know, it could be hard for AI to know that, hey, we can't get an access easement going across this person's property because they're never going to give it to us. Or
It would be. And that's where there's an element of human part of it. But then you said you think it would be hard for it to happen. I also thought the only way to watch movies was always going to be to drive down to the video store and pay $3 for a movie. And
That's
now
true.
you can just stream it on your phone 100 miles off the beach thanks to Elon.
right.
So it could easily, very easily change.
It very well could.
Yeah.
I guess the good thing for us is that we would probably be replaced last.
That would be the hope anyway.
That would be the hope, yes.
Right.
Or at least to make it seem like we're going to be the ones who could be replaced
Yeah.
last.
Yeah, but it's certainly going in, I mean, I think you're seeing, just in your short time in the business, you've seen this business going in a completely different direction. Like I said, I've been here and seen it since hand drafting and Mylars and blueprints to AutoCAD as a drafting platform to now AutoCAD as a design platform and now AutoCAD as like machine control, which you do a lot of as well.
I was
right?
just going to add, I don't do it as much anymore, but when I was in college and when I finished college, I was making machine control for individual lots
Why
for.
don't you explain what that is?
Yeah. So in AutoCAD, there's a bunch of functions that you can use to essentially make a 3D model of a site. You know, 3D showing how everything is sloping, where your swales are, where the pads of buildings are. Really, whatever you want it to show, you have it show walls. I should have brought some of the 3D prints that I have, but I can get into that later. But anyway, so I can make a 3D model of a site and give that to a site contractor, and they'll take that file and manipulate it how they need to, and then they will take that information and it will be uploaded to a piece of equipment, and they can drive the piece of equipment. It's controlled by a GPS, and it will grade off the site exactly how I have it
Right.
in AutoCAD.
Right, and that's, like I said before, as the business has changed, in my world, calculating earth moving and volumes in cubic yards of dirt to be moved, once the engineer drew the plan, we were rarely consulted after the fact. The site contractor made some adjustments in the field and we were none the wiser, and next thing you know, the project either balanced with dirt or had to have some trucked off or some soil trucked in, but the design engineer really wasn't involved a whole lot after the fact. Now, we're involved like intimately with the dirt work.
Yes.
And we're held to an exact yardage standard that we reflect in our calculations, right?
I would say they try to hold us to a hard
Right.
standard, but you know, it's so hard to know exactly what it is that they're going to encounter. If it's suitable fill material, if it's going to compress more than I think it's going to in my calcs, if there's bedrock out there. I mean, there's so many different factors. We can get it close, but you would probably spend more time and money classifying every bit of soil out there to figure out how much you're going to lose, rather than just getting pretty close and making up the difference somewhere else.
Yeah, but you can see where doing this business as an engineer is, while it is engineering, there's so much of it is relationships with not just your client's relationship, which is always one that's could be tenuous, but also your relationship with the review agencies that are reviewing. In our world, it's municipal engineers, it's Department of Environmental Protection engineers, it's
PennDOT.
Department of Transportation engineers, with the site contractors. I mean, you know, you as the engineer are like the hub. Someone would be proud of me for using that.
He
on here,
would, yes.
of that process, and you've got to manage that process. So, like,
Yes.
if you're a young engineer coming out of school, you've got to have some kind of, you know, not only managing and organizational skills, but you've got to have some personality to be able to handle all of those different personalities that are either relying on you or challenging you on a daily basis, right?
I would agree. In my opinion, I would say probably 70 or 75% of either the time spent or your ability should be dedicated to, you know, dealing with personalities, managing people, talking to people, managing other people that are working for you, managing people you're working with, all that stuff. It really, the design part of it really only occupies maybe a quarter of the actual day.
Yeah, and the art of it is you're managing those people that are typically, and I'm being polite, challenging you by questioning things, whether they're questioning the engineering design or questioning what it costs to do it or question whether you've done the right thing. And, like I said before, you get down the road of 2 to 3 years of engineering, and you don't want to find out 2.5 years into it that you should have been going a different direction with your design, because no one wants to pay for the plan to be going back the other way, and no one wants to lose that time invested either.
Of course.
Right? So it's tough. It's tough business.
It is tough business.
Yep.
It can be very rewarding when you're through it. I should say at times it can be very rewarding, but there's other times where it's tough. And
It is, and I just said the other day to somebody, I was like, to a young engineer finally getting a job approved, they're very happy, and there's a huge feeling of relief that you finally got it approved and your client is off your back and you've got achieved what you wanted to get achieved. But really, that's when the real problems start to happen, because now you're out in the field. And you're going to find out where any mistakes that you rush through in the process are going to show their ugly head. So you need to be able to just embrace the fact that no matter what, each day is going to be a challenging day. A day of you being questioned, and you being questioned about a possible mistake or how you're going to fix it.
You just have to, there's no other way to explain it other than you just can't let it bother you. There's no way, it's almost like I can't tell you how to ride a bike. I know you got to sit on the seat and hold the handlebars and try to balance, but you just have to.
It's pretty simple. You're just problem solving, right? So you're going to school to solve problems, and to come in every day and expect there to definitely be problems. And if you like that there will be and expect that there will be problems, then this is the business for you. These are the things that we try to look at when we're interviewing young people to be engineers and whether they're going to be able to do this business. It's much different than sitting in a room and just sizing I-beams or sizing pipes and not having to deal with anything else. You're dealing with all these other different facets of that aren't really engineering at all.
Right. Attorneys and developers, site contractors, and
Right.
sewer engineers, all kinds of stuff.
Right. So if you were going to, you've been in it now for what, 3 years?
I've
4 years
I
almost?
haven't done school for 3 years, but I've probably had maybe 5 or 6 years cumulative experience.
Right, and you see the interns we have walking around the office, and they want to go to school for engineering, and we shadow, like kids shadow here with us. But if you're going to give advice out for someone in high school that's going to go to school for engineering, for this type of engineering, like what would it be? Is that a good question?
That is a fantastic
Good
question.
for
I
you.
got to think about that one for a second. I would say a couple of things. One, you got to have a solid understanding of, math and problem solving, because without that, you're not going to be able to take the next step and be a successful engineer. You would just be, an underling or a what we would call a backroom engineer that's just doing calcs all day. So you got to have that understanding down.
Right.
And
And
then-
needs ditch diggers too.
The world does need ditch diggers too.
Yeah.
We have those. We have
Yep.
some here.
Yep.
But and then the second component would be to be able to not only solve problems, but to be able to read the room and know what you should say to your client, what you shouldn't say to your client, what you should say at a public meeting. And if you go to a public meeting and there was just 10 inches of rain and everything's all washed out, I'm not going to go and talk about stormwater on my project.
Right.
I'm going to talk about houses or anything else
Or
than
you're not going
where we're
to ask
be
for
discharged.
relief from
That-
the stormwater ordinance that
that too.
evening, right after a big flood, right? You're going to just
Like,
table that one for a little while.
Yes, we shouldn't do that. So
Exactly.
that would be my other advice. And then I guess the last bit of advice would be to take your fundamentals of engineering exam before you finish college.
Yeah.
That would be my last bit of advice.
Yeah. Well, to have that personality, no one has to really like me, and few probably do, and that's cool. But they need to believe what you're saying at the township meeting. So I've certainly walked out of many a meeting and had people stop me and say, I don't like your project. I don't even know if I like you, but I do believe what you're saying, and I trust what you're saying, and that to me is more than enough. They don't really need to do more than that for me, but at the end of the day, it's definitely a challenging and tough business.
I would agree.
Well, I think that's going to wrap up our first episode of The Bearded Engineer, No Boundaries. Denny, thank you for coming, and
Thank you for having
looking forward
me.
to having you another episode.
Fantastic.
All right, thanks.
See ya.
See ya. Are they?